When I utter the words eternal derby, the match that comes to your head may be Fenebahce versus Galatasaray. If you're from Greece, you might think it is Panathinaikos versus Olympiakos, or maybe the Cypriot derby of Apoel versus AEC Omonia. Maybe the most famous of all is Serbia's Red Star Belgrade versus Partizan. My point, you may ask? There are 14 different derbies named the Eternal Derby, usually suffixed by the name of the Eastern European nation they play in. So rather than look at them separately, here is a brief history of the Eternal Derby. To start with, we can look which derby best fits its name. Eternal has two definitions in the dictionary. The main use is to describe something that is everlasting, but can also be used in reference to God and the universal spirit. Since none of these matches are linked to the bloke upstairs, the best way to determine the answer to this question is to look at which was played first. The majority faced each other for the first time in the 5 years after the Second World War. This is because new Soviet rulers in these Eastern Bloc countries created a whole host of new football teams, including the ones involved in these fierce rivalries. Going back 15 years from then, we reached the first matches of the Greek and Montenegrin Eternal Derbies in 1927 and 1932 respectively. The infamous clash between Galatasaray and Fenebahce first occurred in 1909, but the oldest Eternal Derby of them all is Hungary's match between Fenebahce and MTK Budapest, owing to the fact it has the second oldest league in continental Europe behind Belgium. It was first contested in 1903, with Fenebahce winning 3-1. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the first game between North Macedonia's FK Vidar and FK Vilista was in 1990, after the derby arose out of a conflict at a Red Star Belgrade game. The Eternal Derby of Hungary's head start hasn't led to them playing the most matches, however. MTK and Fenebahce's 212 meetings is bettered by Croatia's 225 contests, Serbia's 254, although only 162 are officially recorded, and then dwarfed by the mammoth 393 meetings between Turkey's Galatasaray and Fenebahce. The goalkeeper for Galatasaray during the 1950s, Turgay Seran, racked up 54 appearances in the rivalry. That's only 21 less than the total Eternal Derbies ever played in Macedonia. A more interesting statistic is the most one-sided tie exists in Montenegro, where Budućnost have won 48% of the matches compared to Srđeska's 21%. Whereas in Bosnia, there is only a 3-win difference between the two parties. Off the pitch, these derbies are often violent and hooliganism is rife. One club usually represents the working class or socialist ideology, and the upper class or fascist ideology is represented by the other. Examples of clashes include June 1985, when Levski and CSK Sofia were both disbanded by the Bulgarian government after fights in the Bulgarian Cup final between the two sets of players, a decision that was later rescinded a year later. In 2007, a fan from Panathinaikos was stabbed to death at a pre-arranged hooligan meet before a women's volleyball game. The rivalries of many of these derbies also spill out into other sports, and that was the case here. Almost all of these cases encapsulate the essence of a football rivalry and are a must-watch for anyone visiting those countries. Personally, the Serbian, Turkish and Greek Eternal Derbies are on my bucket list. Comment down below which ones you'd want to watch.